God morgon från Paretodesken måndagen den 5 september. Wall Street steg i fredags initialt efter jobbrapporten men vände sedan ner. Ryssland gav besked om att stoppa gasen i Nord Stream 1 på obestämd tid, vilket såklart rörde upp marknaderna. Idag går vi mot en negativ börsdag i Europa, men amerikanska börser håller stängt. Så blir det intressant att följa utvecklingen framöver. Det ser inte jätteljust ut. Vi ska prata om börsernas framtid med Chris Watling, makroanalytiker på Longview Economics, som är vår leverantör av makroanalys. Good morning, Chris. How bad is it? And are we heading for a recession?
Yeah, it's pretty tough out there, I have to say. I mean, I've done this job for a while, and this looks like one of the toughest environments I've seen in sort of 30-odd years. A lot of challenges out there for the consumer in the States and globally. We know about the cost of living crisis, and we also know that the central banks have been very aggressive in America and elsewhere. And we've got the ECB this week, and they're probably going to be pretty aggressive as well. It looks like they'll be doing 75 basis points. So, yeah, we've got aggressive central banks trying to address this, and it looks to us as though you've had the money supply tighten up pretty hard. There's lots of monetary indicators that are making it fairly clear that a recession is very likely or highly likely in 2023. So, yeah, it's very tough. And we've seen the German ministry come out with a new package over the weekend to spend, I think, a $65 billion euro package to support consumers because of the energy crisis. If you look at the UK, electricity bills were £1,000 not that long ago, several months ago, and it looks like there'll be £6,000 per household by the beginning of next year or early next year. So it's a massive increase in costs for people at a time when central banks are tightening policy very hard, and it looks to us like the outlook for the global economy in 2023 is really quite tough. Indeed, some economies I think are feeling it already. So. Yeah, we're cautious and watching closely the developments as they evolve in the States and across the globe.
How much can households and the consumer manage, and how many cutbacks have we already seen?
Well, households, of course, start looking at their, in tough times, they start looking at their costs pretty closely. I mean, we've already seen costs starting to be cut by some households. Some of these tech stuff has suffered a lot. It was all very sexy 12, 18 months ago. I mean, the Peloton's kind of the extreme example, isn't it? But then there's all these subscription services that everyone signs up to, and they suddenly realize they've got more than they need. And companies like Netflix, we see subscribers no longer growing. That was a big thing in the pandemic. People are less inclined to do it anyway once they're getting out and about. But there's an area you can start saving costs on. So people start prioritizing. They start trading down. Instead of buying the fancy brands, they might buy an own label in the supermarket, that sort of stuff. And then we'll start to see unemployment rise at some stage. We're not there yet. If you look at the US, the labor market still looks strong. We had payrolls last week. It was a good number. I mean, it wasn't as big as it's been in the last 12 months, but it was a faster number than you would get in a normal economy that's chugging along at a normal speed. So it's not showing up in the labor market at the moment. We're starting to get one or two signs that things might soften further out. If you look at things like jobless claims, they've ticked up a bit. So, you'll see it there. You'll see it amongst job creation over the next 12, 18 months. And you'll see it in consumers trading down and spending less and so on. So, yeah, it's a tough time. And some of it is starting to show up at the margin already. So all eyes on what the consumer gets up to.
And what do you say
is the biggest
reason
factor behind this?
the
I mean,
recession?
it's
Is it the
obviously
higher
Fed, energy prices and inflation. But is it that one thing leads to another, or could we sort this out?
Yeah, I mean, there's that view in markets that all recessions occur because they're brought about by the Fed and other central banks. So it's really the response of central banks tightening up on money supply, raising interest rates, and therefore tightening that money supply, and bringing about the recession risk in 2023. I'd say that's the key driver. And why are they doing that? They're doing that, of course, because the inflation is extremely high. They printed too much money 12, 18 months ago. There was too much stimulus in the tank. And now they're responding to that and trying to address it and aggressively pushing that. Added to which we've had all these supply shocks. So, you know the story. We had COVID supply shocks, and then we've had Russian war-generated supply shocks, and it's been pretty tough. So central banks are reacting to that. Too much money in the system, supply shocks, raising interest rates, and tightening up money supply as a result. And that's why we have that rising recession risk for 2023.
And I know that this is always hard to tell, but how long do you think the recession will be?
Well, you know, that is exactly what we've been writing about in the last couple of weeks. It's a very big question. There's a big debate out there. It's very divided. There are those that think the Fed can just about come close to pulling off a soft landing or maybe have a mild recession with a tick up in unemployment. And then if you look at some of the monetary metrics, you would say, well, money supply's tightened so hard, there's every reason to believe this could be really quite serious. Or you could take the view that we've burst a bubble in the stock market. We had the everything bubble everyone used to talk about 12, 18 months ago, the sort of Jeremy Grantham thesis out of GMO Mayo out of Boston. And now we're unwinding that everything bubble, and that's going to be pretty tough as well. So there are pretty strong arguments both sides. For choice, we probably starting to lean towards the slightly less cheerful side of the equation. But yeah, this is a very tough call. It's not obvious to me. There's excess in many parts of the global economy in the West. But actually, if you look at the sort of zombie companies, you look at how much business is under pressure from these high energy costs, there are things to worry about. So yeah, I think it could be fairly tough 2023.
Thank you, Chris. Ja, tack så mycket för att ni har lyssnat den här morgonen. Denna vecka har vi healthcare-konferens i Stockholm. Och nästa vecka har vi energikonferens i Oslo. Så är man kund hos Pareto tycker jag att man ska gå in och läsa mer eller ta kontakt med sin mäklare för att kunna anmäla sig och gå på de här konferenserna. Det är 2 stora konferenser, 2 intressanta sektorer där det händer väldigt mycket just nu. Så kolla in det och sen så får ni ha en fortsatt trevlig måndag.